Hi everyone, my name is Jo Cohen. Most of you remember me from teaching crochet and chunky blankets at Nest on Main and from being my students either beginner or intermediate at Kings Park Adult Ed. I've teamed up with Donna at Nest on Main in Northport to produce this video so that we can all make chunky blankets at home. Okay, let's begin. Find the end of your yarn and make a pretzel on the table in front of you. Just like that, and then take your loop and lay it over the strand that is running under at the intersection. So in that case, mine is going to go to my left, and then we're going to pick up this middle strand and pull it a little snug. The tail will make your knot smaller, and the working yarn that's attached to your skein will make your loop smaller. So there we go. Now we have our loop all set. So to gauge the size of your stitches, you'll want this initial chain stitch to be, each loop to be approximately 3 fingers in width. So like that. Your 3 fingers will cover the opening of your loop. That'll give you an even chain stitch to begin with. So let's move the tail out of the way. And let's give ourselves some slack. And we're going to create our first row by pushing a loop up in that first chain and then pushing a loop up like so, and push a loop up. And you'll do that approximately 20 to 22 times. So you have your 22 stitches. Take your ruler or tape measure and measure from end to end and see if you have approximately 40 inches. Mine is 40 inches on the dot. The next step is to create the first row of stitches. So as you can see, this loose loop is actually in this first chain stitch. So we're going to pass that one and go to the next chain stitch, which is right here. So you're going to take your working yarn and push up a loop. These loops are now going to be 2 fingers in width. And then you're going to go to the next chain stitch and push up a loop. And the next chain stitch and push up a loop. And push up a loop. And push up a loop in each one of these curved spots all the way to the end. When you get to the end of your first row, you're going to keep making loops all the way down to the very end stitch. Pull that loop through, and then we're going to head back in the other direction. This time we're going to be pushing up our loops through the existing loops. So we already made this end one, so we're moving to the second one. And push up a loop. And push up a loop. And push up a loop. Make sure that you get every stitch as you're going across. And always give yourself plenty of slack so this way you don't inadvertently pull a stitch out. And just keep working, pushing up a loop each time. We want to go from underneath and pull it over the top, underneath and pull it over the top, all the way to the end. We want to be mindful of those end stitches and make sure that we work our blanket all the way to the very end stitch. So here's this guy is our end stitch. We're going to make sure that we have stitched him, and then we are going to work the next row in the same manner, pushing up a loop and pushing up a loop in all of the existing loops. Take your time and be sure that you are going right into the next loop and not missing any. If you miss one, you will have a dropped stitch, which I can show how to fix that in a later video. So just keep looping, loop through each loop all the way to the end. And when you get to the end, you'll make your loop, your last loop, and then head back in the other direction. And you'll keep doing this until you're out of yarn. So just if you're doing a solid color blanket, you can work right to the end of your skein. And if you're making a striped blanket, you're going to have to be mindful of how much yarn you have left in your skein. You don't want to leave yourself short or with too much. It will take approximately 3.5 yards to complete a row, you know, give or take a little bit. So being that you're doing this at home on your own, you may, if you go to the end too far into your skein or you run short, you may have to pull back your stitches if you're changing colors. If you're making a solid color blanket, there is no problem. You can work right to the end of your skein. So keep stitching in this manner until you have used up your skein. So when you get to the end of your skein, this is not enough to finish a row. We'll change colors. So how do you change colors exactly? So when you're at the end, you're going to stop and we're going to take our new color and find our end, leaving a somewhat generous tail. Figure, I don't know, 12 inches should do it. You're going to just loop through the first loop, just as always, as if you were making a new stitch. Take all of the excess, get it out of your way, just put it on the side, and then you can start stitching just as before with the new color. Remember to give yourself plenty of slack so you don't pull out your new stitch, and just pull up a loop, and pull up a loop, and pull up a loop, all the way across in the new color. And keep stitching just as you did before until you get to the end of that skein. Now we're going to connect 2 skeins of yarn of the same color. So as I had mentioned previously, you can work right up pretty much to the end of your skein of yarn if your next skein is of the same color. So we're going to do a method that I call a mill knot. It's the type of knot that the mills use when they run out of yarn, when they're forming the skeins for retail sale. So what we're going to do is we're going to tie this strand onto this one and this one onto this one. So the easiest way for me to explain that is we're going to make a circle over the one strand, and we're going to take this end tail and bring it up through this side section. Let me make a little more room so that you can see. So we're going to take that tail and bring it up here and give it a tug, not too tight, and then we're going to make a circle on top of the other strand, and we're going to take this tail and bring it up through this section like so, and then we're taking both of our working yarns and pulling them tight, And we're going to pull all of our loose ends tight and give this a little tug. And what that enables us to do is we're able to cut the strands, these end tails, right down to the knot. And the knot will not come loose. It's sturdy. And then we can go along with creating the rest of our blanket. Okay, so we're on the last row and we're ready to cast off, which is the finishing row to the blanket. So you want to have at least 3 yards of yarn left to be able to do that. So 3 yards is you're going to do 3 stretched out arm lengths to measure to make sure that you have enough yarn to reach to the end. Mine is just going to make it. So this is how we cast off. You have your end loop and you're going to make the next loop, and then you're going to take your first loop and put it over the next loop. And then you're going to make your next loop in line, and you're going to take your first loop and put it over that new loop. So you're making a new loop and taking your old loop and putting it over your new loop. Make the new loop, put the old one over the new. Make the next loop, put the old loop over the new loop. Make the next loop, put the old loop over the new loop, and all the way to the end. Normally I would be showing you to make your stitches a little bit looser, but I already know for a fact that my yarn is just going to make it to the end of this blanket. So I'm pulling my stitches a little bit tighter, but you can go a little bit looser on this last row. Okay, and here we are, we're coming up to the end of our row. Our blanket is almost finished. Last couple of stitches. Make sure that you get this last guy. And when you finish that last loop, you can pull your yarn all the way through so that there's just a loose tail. There we go. And there you have it. Now you've cast off. Okay, next we will be taking a look at how to finish all those loose ends and pick up any stitches that may have been skipped. Okay, so here we are. We're now looking at the back of the blanket, the nubby side. So I want you to spread your blanket out and see if there are any loose loops on the back. If there are, you can put a clothespin or a paper clip on it, just so that you don't forget to take care of that before you use your blanket. We're going to now address these tails that were created when we changed colors. So you're going to take a look at how the stitches run on the back of the blanket, and you'll notice that they run in kind of a diagonal pattern. So you're going to take this end and you're going to run it underneath these bumps, a couple of stitches in at least 2 different directions. So I just went this way, and now I'm going to double back in this direction. And then I'm going to tie a knot around this last stitch that I went through. So just tie a knot around that with the tail. Pull it nice and tight. And then you can clip that with your scissor. Okay. And you're going to do that for all of the loose ends in the blanket. So we're going to go take care of this gray one right now. I'll go up this way. Give it a little pull, see how it disappears like that, and then tie a knot around that last stitch. Pull it tight. Okay, and you can cut that little tail off. Now, these blankets are washable and dryable, machine washable and dryable. And I've been asked many times by my students if, what happens when an end comes loose. So if that should happen and your end comes loose, I just want you to take a needle and thread. I'm going to use these 2 strands as an example. Take a needle and thread and stack them on top of one another like that, and then sew through both of those layers. Or if it's just a little loose piece that's in the blanket, you can sew onto whatever stitch is closest to it. So just go through and finish up all those ends. Like so. Always give it a little pull so that it disappears. See how it blends right in like that? You can't even tell that it's there. You can't even tell that the loose end is even in there. And I'll be back to show you how to tie up any end or any drop stitch that you may have on the back of your blanket. So in case you have a dropped stitch, we're going to learn how to repair that right now. I have no drop stitches in this blanket, but I do have one that's loose that we can use as an example. So you're going to take a leftover piece of your same color, and you're going to weave that a couple of stitches prior to the spot, and then you're going to grab that stitch and go around it and then go past it for another stitch or two. And then you can either sew these ends as explained in one of the other segments, or you can tie a knot around each end stitch. Like so. And give that a trim right there and right there. So there you have it, and I hope you enjoyed making this chunky blanket along with me. Thank you for joining me for today's chunky blanket lesson. I look forward to sharing more lessons with you on my YouTube channel. Bye now.